Hi, and welcome to the Becoming Trauma-Informed podcast, where we help you understand how your past painful experiences are affecting your current reality and how you can shift those so you can create your desired future. I'm Dr. Lee, and both myself and our team at the Institute for Trauma and Psychological Safety are excited to support you on your journey. We talk about all the things on this podcast. No topic gets left uncovered. So, extending a content warning to you before we get started. If you notice yourself getting activated while listening, invitation to take care of yourself and to pause, skip ahead a bit, or just check out another episode. Let's dive in. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode. I have the honor of just an absolutely phenomenal guest this week, Dr. Stephen Crane. And we actually got connected in an interesting way through a mutual friend, Bethany George, who's also been on the podcast. Plug for that episode, a few back. And initially, I think we bonded over our mutual love of getting degrees and had a conversation. And I got to learn a lot more about Stephen's story. And for this season of the podcast, I was like, oh my gosh, please, can I have you on? Because Stephen, your story has so many pearls of wisdom in it around leadership. And you've got a great book coming out that I definitely want to talk about. And before we get into all of that, can you tell us who you are, what you love, why you do what you do, what lights you up?
Absolutely. I will try my best. So My name is Stephen Crane. My story really starts back in 2017. I always start off with the past and kind of bring people to the present. 2017, I was getting out of the Marine Corps completely unexpectedly for medical reasons. Became a stereotypical homeless veteran, lost everything, didn't have an idea where to go, what to do. Fast forward over a couple of years from 2017 to 2020, started a couple businesses, climbed the corporate ladder, got some degrees, got my feet underneath of me, basically. 2020, finally got my benefits from the VA, became disabled, got all my benefits, got my feet underneath of me. And then from there, I immediately started 360 Veteran, which is a veteran company focusing on helping veterans increase their disability rating. From there, continued on for another year in corporate for as long as I could stomach corporate. And I was able to retire myself and my wife August of 21 from corporate, never to go back. And then right after that, so it's funny, when one door shuts, another door opens. Immediately after that, I was approached by Network in Action to open up Ohio, to open up a bunch of different cities here because of my network and because of my background, my story and everything. So I opened up Network in Action. And then from there, the story just continues to go and go and go. Fast forward a couple months later, and we get connected. So Here we are today. And what lights me up more than anything, hands down, is hearing people's stories, connecting with people and building actual relationships, not a transactional 30-second elevator pitch. That means nothing to me. It's a waste of my time. I could care less about what you do. I want to know who you are. And then there, I'm able to really, really figure out how we can help each other.
That is why I joined NIA. Honestly, from a networking perspective. So is it Network in Action or Networking in Action? Now that I'm thinking about it, I've just always said NIA. So
Network in Action.
Yeah, Network in Action. And it's so funny. I joined and I'm like, yeah, NIA. And I don't know, networking. Walking into that room, because Bethany invited me, it was a completely different experience from any other networking event that I had ever been to. And it actually really reignited my passion. It reminded me how much I love connecting with people when it's not about what can you do for me? It's about how can we get to know each other, decide if we like each other, figure out if there's a way for us for this relationship to be mutually beneficial, which is such a huge, it's such a huge tenet of the work that we do at the Institute. And so it felt so aligned. And so I'm just going to start off by shamelessly plugging NIA. If you are somebody who would benefit from networking, it's a phenomenal group. And I can totally see why they approached you to do it because you're really good at it.
Appreciate it for sure.
Yeah.
I just consider myself good at just talking to people. I'm not a super extroverted person. I'm not someone that will walk into every networking event and just be the spotlight of attention. I'm the quiet person in the corner that just wants to meet one person. And then from there, I'm going to spend the next 7 days taking them out to lunch, inspecting them, figuring out who they are, learning their life story. And from there, a lot of magic seems to happen.
Yeah.
There's very little that you can do in about an hour's worth of a networking event when you're exchanging an elevator pitch. There's very little you can do with that. But if I take you out to dinner and I actually learn, hey, who's Lee? Right?
Yeah.
Where did this person come from? Then you find out, oh, it's much more than just this trauma institute. There's a whole plethora of things behind you that you can help me out with. And there's so many people, and there's so much more value to that than just one little thing that you do.
Mm-hmm. I think that this is such an important part of the leadership conversation, because so many of us are taught to really lead with that elevator pitch. And it's honestly, number one, why I have people introduce themselves and I don't read your bio, because your bio is, yes, it's interesting. And to me, your bio is often the least interesting part about you, or not the most interesting part about you would probably be a better way to say that. I want to know, like, who is the person behind that bio, and what led this to be your bio, because that story is typically so much richer and more fascinating, and there's emotional connection that can happen in there and resonance, and that is such a core part of the human experience. And when we just start with, this is what I do, and we start immediately thinking about, okay, how can this person help me? That's not resonance, that's extraction. Which I don't want to shame or degrade anyone that uses those. I know that a lot of networking groups, it's like, okay, here's your business card off the bat. Like, what do you do? Who do you serve? How can this connection benefit me? And it really does make a difference if those relationships are there, because there's a human in NIA with us that when I went to the first meeting, my initial reaction was like, oh, I'm not going to like that person. Like, we have nothing to talk about. He's in an industry that's like not something that I have anything to do with. I'm not going to trade business cards with this person. And then when we started talking, I was like, oh my gosh, we have so much in common. And I love his perspective on things. And so then we went on a coffee chat, and then like we're having lunch in 2 weeks. And I'm like, I don't think we've actually talked about business in the times that we've connected. And yet I've learned so much from him.
Yep. 100% agree. 100%. And it's the stories behind everything, because I can read off my bio on the back of the book, and you hear about 125 professional certifications, you hear 7 degrees, you hear all this, and you're like, okay, cool. The person's educated, right? Awesome. Why? That's the first question people ask. Why are we not talking about that? Right? A lot of people are like, why would you get 7 degrees? And you do what? You're an entrepreneur? How are you using the degrees?
Right.
You have your seat. You have all this stuff. Why are you not doing this? Why are you not doing this? Ask me the reason why I have that stuff in the first place, and I'll answer every question you could have. Because for me, I'll quickly tell that story, because that's a huge part of it. It goes back to a lot of our trauma. It goes back to a lot of stuff we deal with growing up. And for a lot of us, it's a journey to uncover why we are the way we are. And to me, I think that's one of the coolest things about life, is figuring out, going back in your past, coming up with a story on why you are the way you are, and how science and psychology kind of fits into that. The neuroscience of it, I know we talked about that, but all that is so fascinating. So for myself, growing up, I was super high IQ, super ADHD kid. I was reading dentistry books in kindergarten. I kid you not. I was reading biology books. I was reading just anything I was super fascinated with astronomy. I was just weird, right? I was just a weird, curious kid, but I loved it. I loved learning. Got into school, teachers made fun of me, kids made fun of me, horribly bullied. I'm a short, me, I'm super short. I'm a little dude, big dude, but little dude. But I'm just awkward, right? So people bullied me. And that made me, in my mind, okay, if I go to school, school equals harm. School equals bad people. hurting me. I don't like school. I don't like learning. No more books, no more reading. So by the time I got to middle school, my curiosity, my enthusiasm for learning, it was gone. I could care less about it, especially going into high school. I wanted nothing to do with education, nothing to do with learning. All my dreams of, becoming an astronaut, all these things like that you have as a kid, squished. You're going to be a friggin', truck driver, or, you're going to do this. You're going to do this. You can only do this because this is what society says you can do, or you can only do this because this is what your friends and your teachers told you can do. I'm going to stop you here, when all of us has the potential to do so much more. I hated learning. That made me in school not want to attend, not wanted to listen, not wanted to achieve my full potential. The only thing I wanted, the only thing that I needed in my Maslow's hierarchy was security. So I did anything I could to just fit in, make a friend, and I could care less about anything else at that point. Going into high school, especially growing up without really a father figure in my life for the most part, because he was always work and really never had that, I wanted to reclaim that masculine energy in my life. And I wanted to prove to myself that, one, I am a whatever we as society determines as a man, I'm one of those. And then also on top of that, I am smart. Right? I do like learning. And why should I have to succumb to other people's opinions about me? So I wanted to reclaim that, but I couldn't. I didn't have that energy. I didn't have that drive, that masculine, I am the macho man.
Yeah.
So that led me to join the Marine Corps, because I wanted to reclaim that energy and say, what's the hardest branch out there? Let's go and do that. I could care less about serving in the military. I could care less about the benefits that it provided. I could care less about any of that. For me, it was just a personal journey of proving to myself that I am worthy. I am strong enough. I am hard enough. I am whatever society wants to label it. I am that. And through that process, after graduating boot camp and after graduating School of Infantry, all this stuff, like all the trainings, after going through everything, that's when I felt like, you know what? I made it. I'm good enough. And that reignited my passion for learning. And that's why from that point forward, what was that, 2014? Yeah, 2014 and on, I started doing bachelor's, I started doing master's, certifications, learning, getting anything and everything that I ever wanted, because I love that. At the root of it, that's who I am. I love learning. I love educating other people. I love helping other people. So that was kind of the journey on dissecting the bio. Why do you have all these degrees and certifications? That's so much more interesting than just, I'm more educated than you.
Right. I got chills as you were telling that story. And thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that story, because I think that resonates with a lot of leaders. And this is why it's so important to ask that why, like pulling in the trauma piece, is because some people, the education is the aligned response. It's the, okay, I went through this really traumatic event and this is how I'm going to really show up, like unmasked as myself. And then for others like me, the education was actually the trauma response, right? So this is the only place that I feel good at things, that I feel like I'm not questioning myself. So I'm going to just stay here and keep getting degrees and keep going this direction, because that is the definition of success generationally in my family. And this is the place where I feel like I belong the most. So for you, it was a place of not belonging. School, I didn't really, I'm not going to say I belonged, but I felt like I belonged from an academic perspective. Like I could excel and get recognition and appreciation that way. And so that's why I'm always so fascinated when it's that underlying, why are the degrees here? Because sometimes it's because that's who I am. And sometimes it's because that's who I was taught to be or conditioned to be. And that is right. It's just so much more interesting than like, okay, yep, they're both doctors, right? They both have doctorates. Here's my other question. I'm pulling this from the previous conversation we had. You talked about the role that you held in the military, in the Marine Corps, and you actually expanded my mind around this, because I was like, wait, you did what? And you did all of those things at the same time, and why and how? So I would love for you to share about what your role was and how that played out for you and how it affects how you show up now.
Well, for sure. So in the military, and everyone's military careers and experiences are different, but it really does depend on the branch that you go into and then the time that you served. For me, I served between 2012 and 2017, which was peacetime.
Yeah.
There's nothing going on. Well, kind of, but not really. It wasn't
relatively
2002. It wasn't
right.
2004. It was peacetime.
Yeah.
So for that, for those that don't know the military, you go down to skeleton crews. You go down to bare bones essential people. Many people get, relieved of duty. Many people retire out. They leave. They're like, well, there's no war. I'm out. Like, I joined for war. Why am I here? And then they leave. So during peacetime, it's kind of a weird lull, if you will. The people that are there typically are a lot of support roles. And of course, you do have your combat roles and everything, and they're able to go and get time off with their family. They're able to, do things, training, catch up on academia, stuff like that. But for support roles, it becomes very, very harsh during peacetime because you have no one to help. It's you. Because why am I going to invest money into this when I need to save money for the next war and build up our infrastructure and so on? So if you're not supporting a war as a support element, then you get a skeleton crew. That was me. So I went into the Marine Corps as administration. It's called admin, 0111s. And in that, there's a lot of fields within administration. You have the HR piece, you have the retirement piece, you have the personnel management piece, you have the postal service, you have the legal side, you have so many elements. And a lot of times when you're new, you kind of go into one field, and then from there, you may bounce around to a different one and a different one, depending on the unit that you're assigned to, and depending on the time of war. For me, I started off with admin, quickly moved over into postal, quickly moved over into personnel management, quickly moved into legal, and that's where my kind of realm was shaped from. So when people say, what did you do in the military? I did literally all things administration.
Yeah.
Some people have the opportunity, some people don't. For myself, it was based on achievement, going back to proving yourself.
Yeah.
Based on achievement. It was like, okay, what do I need to do to max out here so I can go and do this? Got to fill my ADHD bubble. And then once I hyperfixate on this, I'm going to bounce over to this. And once I become the best here, I'm going to bounce over to this. That was it for me. It was like Pokemon, right? I wanted to collect them all. I wanted to get them all and just be done with it. So I did that. And I was very good. So good that I was hand selected by our commanding officer to come and to serve as his assistant and to be his right hand. That's a huge honor and privilege. And really, I mean, think about it from like a corporate standpoint.
Yeah.
If that happens, any opportunity you want, it's in front of you.
Right. You got tapped, right?
You're done. They're like, anything you want, it's yours.
Yeah.
So for me, it was the validation I was looking for. But more importantly, it placed me in a position at a skeleton crew as an E4. I was placed in a position of an E8. So that's the equivalent of being like, a supervisor at a job. And then the next day you're promoted to a senior director or junior VP role.
Wow.
That's a big jump.
Huge jump.
You don't know what you're doing exactly.
Yeah. And how old are you? You're
at this point, I'm 2021.
Yeah. You're a baby.
I don't know what I'm doing.
You're a brand new adult. Yeah.
But the CEO saw something in me. My peers saw something in me. They saw like, okay, this kid actually knows what he's doing. He's very mature. He has a very good executive presence. He knows how to speak. He's very polite, respectful, everything. This guy's actually pretty good. we're going to go ahead and like tap him for like mass sergeant. We're going to tap him for, something later on in life. I was like, this is a huge blessing. I'm going to do my job. I'm going to be the best. I did that. But you got to remember, in the military, different roles, different billets, as they call them, different positions, carry with them different responsibilities. Hindsight 2020, there's a reason why these responsibilities lie with certain people. In my position, think of it again from a company standpoint. You have a 25-year-old hotshot Harvard law graduate that's now telling 40 and 50-year-olds exactly what to do in their job. And the 40 and 50-year-old have to comply. If not, they're fired. They're kicked out. That creates tension. That's bad, because I feel like an imposter. First off, like, listen, I know you know way more than I do in this subject. I'm just telling you, legally, you have to do this. Don't shoot the messenger, right? So you feel like an imposter, and then they feel like, who are you?
Right.
Get out of here. Stop. No, I'll do what I want, and you'll respect me. So it's a weird dichotomy, balance, and power struggle that you have. For me, I like that challenge because it forced me to level up my game. I was no longer allowed to be an E4, an E5. I was no longer to be this. I had to perform at an E8, E9 level with my presence, my leadership, who I commanded, how I influenced them, the way I approached situations, and the way I commanded a room. Because there were also programs that, again, hindsight 2020, I really shouldn't have been part of for my age, because I was dealing with the psychiatrists on the base. I was dealing with the doctors. I was dealing with the attorneys. I was dealing with other generals. And I was the person briefing these people on how these people are doing medically, mentally, physically, their suicidal ideations, their rapes and murders and everything else that were going on. I was the one briefing these top people on what was happening to my coworkers, who I was in charge of at 20 years old, right? Wow. That's weird. And
it's traumatic too.
That's the thing that I'm trying to get to, is the traumatic portion. Because when you're in that room and you're dealing with that, you, as a VP, let's say, you know what's going on in the company, and you've had the time to mature and learn that, listen, not everyone needs to know everything. This is who I am. This is the position. I understand this person's dealing with this, but I can't let that interfere with this. I had to learn this trial by fire. I had to learn this within like 3-6 months and then be able to perform at that level. So when I was learning and I was reading these briefs and I was watching, the child abuse cases, child pornography, and everything that was going on inside the base that my coworkers were part of, that I had to then separate and say, listen, we're friends here. Legally, I'm going to have to put you in the brig because of X, Y, and Z now.
Oh my gosh.
It's harsh for a 20, 21-year-old to deal with that. People don't realize the severity of what I've dealt with in my life at that short amount of time. People don't fathom the responsibilities that we put on our Marines, airmen, soldiers, everything like that. But that's reality. And trust me, I'm not the one-off case. I'm not the majority, but I'm certainly not a one-off case. There were many of my peers who were also tapped at different bases across the country to do similar things. But now here we are, 22 years old, getting out of the military. You can't even talk about what you've done. One, because it's classified, it's super high level, you can't do it. But then two, when you try to explain this to people, you want to talk about imposter syndrome? I'm talking to an HR manager, no disrespect to the HR manager. I have way more experience in real life or death situations than you could even fathom. So respectfully, I don't want to talk about my degree that I got. I want to talk about how I can make sure that people aren't committing suicide here. That's the reality. And for that to take place, that's at the core of leadership, is being able to understand people and understand how influence works and understand how your own self-awareness impacts your situations.
the squirrels in my brain are going in 6 different directions of what I want to say, because there was so much goodness and just so much in that, everything you just shared. So the first thing that popped up that I want to pick out here is that you were placed in a position of leadership where people were following you because they had to, not because they wanted to. And what is so fascinating is that as entrepreneurs, that's not typically the scenario, right? People only pay you if they want to pay you. People only hire you if they want to hire you. And it's 2 very different types of leadership. Am I leading people who have chosen me as their leader versus am I leading people who I've been placed in position as their leader? And how you approach that, like you said, you very quickly learn that there's a delicate balance in how you approach that. And you actually reminded me of when I became a professor at the age of, gosh, how old was I? 26, 27, right? Really young. And I was teaching people that had a decade, 2 decades of nursing experience over me, who like I was their kids' age. And I'm teaching them and they're like, why would I listen to you? Like, I'm listening to you because I have to. Like, that doesn't mean I like it. That doesn't mean I'm going to make this easy for you. And that was a huge learning lesson. And you're right. The imposter syndrome of that is like, am I really going to teach somebody who has kids that are older than me? Am I really going to teach somebody who has 10 to 20 years of experience in this field and I've got 2? What I'm curious about around that is, what kind of support did they give you? Like, was there support around? Okay. Yeah. I was thinking it was probably similar to what I got, because, and this is something I think from the systemic level, we've really got to start looking at, is we want to make sure that the young humans who are hungry for leadership, that yes, we put them in positions where they can quench that thirst, and also make sure that they have mentorship and they have support, like not just from a, this is how you do your job, also from a, this is how you hold your role.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that would have made a difference for you if there had been someone for you to just kind of like, talk about the weight of all of this?
For sure. I mean, for myself, during that transitionary period,
Yeah.
I would say, I was definitely seeing counselors, therapists, and everything like that to talk about what I was seeing at work.
Yeah.
I mean, cops, police, law enforcement, it doesn't matter. They see some really they see the evil of the world that most people never see.
Right.
They see things that no other human should see, and it's not natural to see. So they have to talk to someone about it. And that's why a lot of law enforcement snap, a lot of law enforcement have issues, because they've been to the side of the world where no one should be. And if they don't have proper support systems in place to help them bring them back into the light, you become literally entrenched in that darkness. And it's impossible to get out.
Yeah.
Unless you have some sort of support, unless you have some people there to help kind of continuously bring you back to life. For me, I had a really good mentor. I really did. He unfortunately left before I assumed a lot of these positions, but I had a good mentor leading up to these things.
Yeah.
And the commanding officer was good. I had a good executive team, but at the same time, that was the executive team.
Yeah.
It wasn't a peer, a third party. It wasn't someone else that I could actually lean on for that mentorship and say, listen, I don't need advice necessarily. I don't need you to say, it's okay, sweetie, everything's going to be okay. I don't need this. I don't need this. I need a sounding board to make sure, am I going insane, or is this normal to deal with? I think that's so critical, not only for leaders in companies, but also in the military, of course. because there are hungry people. There are hungry individuals that are more than worthy, more than ready to step into those roles, but they don't need to be thrown into that role.
Yeah.
They can be slowly dipped into
Like,
the role, right?
Like
And
we
then
can wade
if
into
God
the
forbid
pool.
that you need to pull them out, you still
Yeah.
have the hook on them and you can
Yeah.
remove them and put them in safety and then continue to dip them until they get comfortable. If that was in place in companies and in different roles across the country, I think you would see a lot of young people be able to rise up to positions quicker, but more importantly, be able to do it more effectively.
Yeah. Okay, so two thoughts went through my head as you were talking. The first one is, you know, when I started the Institute, I actually hired someone that her name's Sarah Chiswick, and she was a coach around like swamping and feeling your feelings, like emotionally processing and connecting back with like who you were. And I went to her and I said, hey, I know this isn't what you typically do. I need a composter. She was like, tell me more. And I said, I know that what I am going to hear from people in this role, if I do not move it through my body, it's going to take me out. I'm not going to be able to continue doing this. So I need a space where I can dump all of the shit and then we can compost it so that then it can serve as fertilizer for the continued growth of our organization and for my growth. And she was like, done. So I said, I just need an hour a week, you know, an hour every other week where I come in and I share all the stuff with you. And I'm like, I need to know that you can hold that. And she's like, well, yeah, I can hold that because I have my own places to go compost. And I was like, great. Okay.
That's such a great analogy.
It made all the difference because I knew that, you know, as a nurse practitioner and as a nurse, I was in critical care for over a decade. The things I have seen with the human body, I don't talk about because I'm like, trust me, if you knew the things that could happen with your body, like they would keep you up at night. They kept me up at night. And I know that it's harmful for me to talk about those things in spaces where people aren't prepped for the capacity or don't have the capacity to hold that. And it's still really important that I have that space. So that was the first thing is I think so many leaders think that they have to do this alone or they have to use the resources that work provides. And I'm like, from a psychological safety perspective, talking about wanting to belong, employee assistance programs and the internal programs that we have set up for people, there's a reason people don't use those a lot of times. And it's because, okay, well, I know you're saying you're not going to tell anybody this. And also, am I going to see you on the base in 2 weeks? Am I going to run into you in the hallway and know that you know all these things about me? That can feel really dangerous for people. And so having that external source, and that's something that we really love to do at the Institute, is provide that external source of like, bring that stuff to us. We won't tell your boss. Like, we don't even know your boss. It's fine. Right. But the other thing that came through is thinking about your mentors are also going through this stuff. And so leaning on mentorship when a lot of times your mentors or the people, like you said, that executive team, they don't have the capacity. And so it's not like they don't want to mentor you or they don't want to support you or they don't want, like, it's not that they want to throw you in the deep end. They don't oftentimes have the choice. It's, I need somebody in there now because I'm drowning. And I'm going to help them as much as I can. But like, also, if I try to save you, we're both going down. You talked in the beginning when you were sharing the first part of your story about being homeless and about really that transition out of the military. And I actually have a slight bit of insight into this because my mother worked at the VA and worked with homeless veterans and helped with temporary housing, and watching the process from her side was so frustrating because of how many places and spaces her hands were tied in helping people. And I'm curious about your perspective going through that.
So first off, I can say most veterans have no idea the services that are out there.
Mhm.
They just don't. Had I known about that, that would have been cool.
Right.
know?
Yeah, right. Right.
Don't even know about it. On top of that, you also need to factor in the human element of trauma. And when
Mhm.
you're going through it, you're not thinking clearly at all. You're in
Mhm.
survival mode. You immediately drop down to your lowest level. And for me, it was just security. It was just
Yeah.
safe. Where's my water? Where's my
Mhm.
food? Where's my shelter? It's all I cared about.
Mhm.
And so when you're going through that, you're not thinking about, oh, I remember once upon a time someone told me this resource and let me figure out a way to get a phone so I can call this resource and make this happen. Oh yeah, I just happen to have this handy dandy thing on me. Like, no, it doesn't
No.
happen. You're in survival mode, you're scraping and clawing around to figure out what can I do? And
Mhm.
that makes you do a lot of dumb decisions. It makes you do a lot of things that you look back, hindsight, and you're like, shit, I really did that. I'm
Mhm.
sorry, right?
Yeah.
But you're in trauma response mode. You're in flight or flight, and you're just trying to survive. That for me, that's where it came from. It was
Mhm.
just a matter of survival. So any job I could get, any money I could scrounge, anything that I could do, doesn't matter how low it was, how high it was, I could care less. I just wanted money. I just wanted to provide for my wife. I just wanted to get something underneath of me so I could have some security. So, to your point, with all these resources that are out there, that's awesome. But what I found, and now that I've actually worked in the space too,
Yeah.
what I found is the people that need it the most, how do I say this? The services that you provide are amazing. The problem is you're not getting to the person that needs it the most.
Yep.
You're typically dealing with the middle of the road people
Yep.
where, yeah, they could use it, but they don't need it. Or you're dealing with partners that maybe through them and through this person, you can actually reach this person,
Yep.
but it's not the same. For example, as a business owner, this is where my mind goes.
Yeah.
If my job is to clean up the homelessness on the streets for veterans,
Yeah.
why would I sit in an office?
Right.
They're not calling, they don't have a phone.
Yeah.
Why would I be sitting around the office? Why would I be going to networking events saying, like, a homeless veteran? Why would I be doing that?
Yeah.
Go live under an overpass.
Yeah.
Just go on the street, have a freaking van, go coordinate with the local law departments and stuff, sit in your van by highways and stuff and just look. And if you see someone just walking around, be like, hey, are you a veteran? Hey, hop in my van, I'm going to take you over here.
Yeah.
Obviously make it nice and have
Right.
you
Hop in
know,
my van. Yeah.
that's where
No,
the
I got you.
problem
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
That's a need. Here's the intervention, and now we're able to solve them. Same with like drug addicts. They sit behind their desks and they wait for
Mhm.
like a phone call from
Mhm.
Health and Human Services and stuff and saying like, oh, you have someone? Okay, let's process the paperwork.
Right.
No, they're on the freaking street. They're behind an
Right.
alley. Go to them.
Yeah.
Or they're inside a trap house. They're inside an apartment that's run down. That's where your service needs to be, not in some office building over here where you're safe and away from the problem. Your problem is here. Why are you not where the problem is? I don't get it.
I feel so grateful you are talking about this for two reasons. One, this actually ties back to what we were talking about of like, there are professions where we see things that no human should ever see, or like where we witness things that no human should ever experience. But our brains really try to pretend that those things don't exist.
Mhm.
And so if I can sit in an office and say that I'm doing something to help people, and I don't have to actually go see it and experience it and feel it, that feels way better for my nervous system, right? I can remove myself from the emotional part of this. And so if people then don't utilize the services, I can say, oh, well, we tried. And I want to be really clear because I feel like most people who are in those office settings or who are in those more systemic or organizational roles where they are trying to help people, they really want to help people. if you were like, hey, you can go out on the street tomorrow, they'd be like, cool. Like, where's my van? Like most people who go into these professions to help, they're down for that kind of work.
Yep.
It's that from a systemic perspective, we've set it up in a way where we're like, okay, well, what's the legal liability? What's the financial? What's this? What's that? And we start looking at it from this, how do we protect ourselves as the organization versus how do we actually make an impact with these people who need it the most? And so I want to be really clear that I am not talking about the individuals when I say people don't want to go out there. I'm talking about the system sets it up so that it is hard for us as individuals to go do that work.
Yep.
And this is a place from a leadership perspective too, that I think is so fundamentally important, is oftentimes as we move, I guess there's a pun intended here, as we move up the ranks, we get removed from the front line, so to speak. We get removed from like where these things are happening. And so we're making decisions about what's happening at the front line when we haven't stepped foot out there in a really long time. So we don't actually know the landscape. We don't know what people are going through. We don't know how the decisions we're making are impacting people. And so I just really appreciate you bringing this up, because it's also about, like you said, this is the second piece, the physical safety. So often we judge people without permanent residence, people with substance use disorders, people who are frequently in and out of the prison system, people who are in like sex work, all of these. I'm thinking about people who are oftentimes like, quote unquote, on the street. And what we say is like, well, we've offered them help and they're not taking it, so it's their fault. Or like, why are they holding up a cardboard sign on the side of the road when they could go get a job? And I think that you're highlighting the neuroscience and the nervous system piece of this, which is getting a job takes planning. There are 37 steps in the process of getting a job. There's one step in me holding up a cardboard sign. And if my nervous system is focused on getting money and getting food and getting shelter, resources right now, that job doesn't make sense, because it's going to take me 6 weeks to get a paycheck. I'm going to have to get all of these things or have all these resources to get the job, versus I can ask for money right now. I can go break into a store that is abandoned right now. I can go turn a trick right now.
Yep.
So those of us who are in this position where we already have security, we're thinking about it, we're from the perspective of future planning, going, well, that's going to hurt you in the future. The future doesn't matter if you don't survive the now. And so many people in corporate right now, I was actually talking with someone yesterday, and she's like, how many people do you think are walking around traumatized? And I was like, everyone. She's like, really? I said, yeah. We just went through this massive collective trauma in the pandemic, and there's all this uncertainty and all these things. And so this isn't just people who are homeless. This isn't just people who are in these, vulnerable positions around their security and their needs. This is also those of us in these leadership positions where we're like, we don't know what we're doing, or like, I don't have the resources I need to help the people I'm here to help. So we make decisions out of urgency that negatively affect us in the future, because we're like, I got to focus on right now.
I think you touched on coaching.
Yeah.
I mean, at the core of it, because when you look at researching, you look at people and you just think about it critically for a second, either you make the assertion that there are people that are better than you, and they will always be better, and you will always be subservient to them because you're less intelligent, your IQ is not this, you don't go to Harvard, whatever. Either you accept that reality, or you accept the reality that there's another possibility here. And the possibility with coaching is those that receive coaching, and for those that know what coaching is, it's just holding a safe space and asking questions, allowing people to process things. People that receive coaching turn out to be more successful. Why is that? Is it because the coaching instilled some awesome enlightenment and career coach, career counseling and consulting? No. Coaching is simply just holding a space to process, compost the shit. That's all it is. So you mean to tell me if I hire someone to coach me and to compost the shit, I magically become more successful? Yes, because you are able to process things in a more clear, concise manner, which allows you to make more intelligent decisions. Again, this person's not more intelligent than you. I mean, technically may have a higher IQ, but it doesn't matter. They were able to make decisions because they have a safety net underneath of them that allows them to not focus on Maslow's hierarchy down here. They're focused on enlightenment. They're focused on that final element because they have that net. They're not worried about where their meal's coming from. They've got it. They're not worried about their car payment. They already made it. They're not worried about where their next paycheck's coming from. They already know. They already have this. You don't. That's the only thing that separates the two of you.
Right.
Once you realize that, and you realize that holding a space for someone to compost the shit is the real differentiator between success and failure, and being able to just process things from a real intellectual standpoint, you're able to make better decisions that will compress time frames and exponentially grow you as a person. You can talk about spiral dynamics of human development, whatever. You will exponentially rank up the more time you have to meditate, read books, get your mindset right, and everything like that. Who the hell has that time if you're on your pass?
That's what you just like to take that. If I am resourced, that opens up mental real estate for me to be able to actually be curious and to ask questions and to process and to evaluate and to make decisions that my future self and the people that I'm leading are grateful for. And like, thank you for just touching on the absolute core of what we are talking about at our leadership conference in November, because this is it. Because, we're talking right now about humans that are under-resourced and at a very significant level. And I think a lot of times people don't think of leaders or like C-suite execs or, VPs of companies or successful entrepreneurs as under-resourced. They are very under-resourced right now, psychologically. I don't have what I need. I'm so focused on putting out fires all the time and protecting the resources that we have, that I can't think at a higher level. And I think that's where the work that you do comes in. That's where the work that we do comes in. And so, yes, we're going to talk about how you lead people and how you help other people be resourced and help them, thrive. And that really hinges on your thriving and your ability as a leader to think and to have that space to process. Because without that, you're right, you're going to make some really stupid decisions. I've made really stupid decisions from places of being under-resourced. And yes, it's judgmental. And also, I don't say that with any like shame or blame towards myself. I can look back and go, yeah, you were really under-resourced. So the decision you made wasn't one that really served you in the future because you were thinking about the now. So thank you for helping tie that up in a very pretty bow, getting down to the core of that. As the last thing, you have this book coming out that I absolutely cannot wait to read. Tell us a little bit about that.
So flush the BS.
I love it.
Keyword, right? BS. Yeah. A lot of people think bullshit immediately. Right. It's BS, belief system.
Which I love.
Belief system. Flush your belief system, reframe your life, and transform your truth. The entire book is not only kind of a mini biography of the 5 years from homeless to retired that I experienced, but it really talks about how you have the choice in every situation. And it's funny, people are like, oh, well, it's a mindset book. That's cool. Yeah, but it's a little bit more than that, because when you think of a mindset book, you think of this toxic positivity where all you got to do is make lemonade out of lemons.
Right.
Well, chapter 1, the world is out to get you. Chapter 2, life can really suck. Chapter 3, you are in control.
Yeah.
The first 2 chapters, and actually chapter 4, embrace the suck.
Right.
It specifically says you are in control even when life kicks you in the teeth. Yeah. My first 4 chapters of the book is nothing but truly trauma bonding. and walking you through my story of life does suck. Things will happen. It's not pretty. It's harsh. There's dark, everything. And I agree with you. But I also agree with you that you have the choice to either stay there and accept that reality. And for a lot of people, that is reality. And you can't tell them that that's not reality. That is reality. That's
their reality. They are committed to that version of reality. Yes.
It's true. And you can give me 1,000 examples of why that's true.
Yeah.
But I can also, on the other hand, give you the exact same perspective from a world of opportunities and a world of hope and chance and faith and everything like that. And I can give you 1,000 examples of why this reality is true. And that's the coolest thing. And to wrap everything up, it's about choice. It's that simple. You get to choose your outcome and how you write your story. The way that I interpreted, and I talk about Gale's, Gremlin's, interpretations, assumptions, limiting beliefs, the way that you interpret why I got 7 degrees and 125 professional certifications or whatever, I could have interpreted that 1,000 different ways. I get to choose how I reframe my life and transform that truth in my life. The truth is, I'm highly educated. The way I see that education is either one from, well, my parents told me I had to succeed. That's why I did this, and I don't like my parents anymore. That is reality. They did tell me to excel and do this. Another reality, though, is I was bullied. I always liked learning. It was sheltered because of trauma. I reclaimed it, and now I'm back to where I initially was born to be. So it's up to you to decide what you want out of life, and that's the entire purpose of the book.
Your book is based on one of my absolute favorite quotes. I don't know if I made it up, somebody else said it, I don't know. But it's whatever you decide is the truth. And that has been a fundamental thing for myself is to get resourced enough to be able to ask the question, what am I choosing as my truth right now? And do I want that to be my truth? And thank you for bringing the duality into the conversation of, yes, life absolutely is going to hand you shit. And we're not bypassing that. And you still get to choose. Okay. Well, we could talk probably for 3 hours. We both got to go. So we'll make sure that we drop the link for your book in the show notes, and also for people to be able to get in contact with you if they'd like to learn more about you and your business. Plugging Network in Action, I'm also going to drop the link for that. If y'all are local, you can come see me at a meeting. That would be phenomenal. And if not, they're all over. So yeah, thank you for being on here with me, Stephen. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
See you next week, y'all.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Invitation to head to our show notes to check out the offers and connections we mentioned. Or you can just head straight over to institutefortrauma.com and hop in our email list so that you never miss any of the cool things that we're doing over at the Institute. Invitation to be well and to take care of yourself this week, and we'll see you next time.